I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to write something like this. You know the kind, the ones you read about on Reddit and silently judge. How could she not see the signs? Or why didn't she just leave? That used to be me. I was that person. I had opinions about everything, about how I'd never tolerate cheating, how I'd walk the second someone disrespected me. It's funny how easy it is to have boundaries when they're theoretical. Because when it's real, when it's happening to you, everything becomes so blurry, so hard to define. When I met Ethan, I was 28. He was a few years older, confident in that quiet, almost arrogant way that made you believe he knew where he was going. I was just getting out of a messy breakup, trying to rebuild myself. He was stable, mature, and kind, or at least that's what I wanted to believe. We met at a friend's birthday dinner, and he was the first person in months who made me laugh without effort. I remember thinking that night, he feels safe. And maybe that's what I was craving more than anything, safety. First year with him was easy, almost suspiciously so. We were that couple people joked about, the ones who didn't fight, who posted soft, candid photos, who seemed to just get each other. But love has a way of hiding cracks beneath the surface, and I was too caught up in the warmth of being wanted to notice the small things. Like how he always put his phone face down, or how he never liked when I posted photos of us online, or how he'd pull away slightly when I got too affectionate in public. It started unraveling one night when I couldn't sleep. He'd left his laptop open on the couch, and I wasn't looking for anything, truly. I just wanted to close it, turn off the screen, and go back to bed. But then a message popped up on the corner, a name I didn't recognize. "Can't wait to see you again." My stomach flipped. My body went cold. It wasn't even the words, it was the casualness of it. The way it appeared in the middle of the night like it belonged there. Like it wasn't a secret. I told myself not to overreact, that maybe it was work-related, a joke, a misunderstanding. But the next morning, when I tried to bring it up, Ethan brushed it off. "It's just a friend from a client dinner," he said, not meeting my eyes. And I wanted to believe him. God, I needed to believe him. Because believing him meant I wasn't about to lose the life we'd built. It meant I wasn't stupid. But after that, the doubt seeped in like water through cracks. I started noticing how he'd stay late at work more often. How his phone suddenly had a passcode. How he'd shower immediately when he came home. My anxiety turned into obsession, checking his social media, reading into every tone, every pause. I became someone I didn't recognize, someone I hated. Then came the night everything fell apart. I was out with friends, trying to distract myself, when my friend Olivia leaned over and said, "Hey, is Ethan in the city tonight?" My heart skipped. "He said he was working late," I replied. She looked confused. "That's weird. My coworker just posted a story from that rooftop bar on 5th, and I'm pretty sure he's in the background." I don't remember leaving the restaurant. I just remember the cold air hitting my face as I ordered an Uber and my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped my phone. When I got there, the place was loud, full of music and laughter, but my eyes found him immediately. He was at the bar, leaning close to a woman I didn't know. And he was smiling, that smile he used to give me. He saw me before I reached him. His face drained of color, and I'll never forget that look. The moment he realized the facade was gone. The woman turned, confused, and when she saw me, she looked down, almost guilty, like she knew. I didn't make a scene. I didn't scream or throw a drink. I just said quietly, "How long?" He didn't answer, and that silence told me everything. I left. I walked home because I couldn't stand being in that car with his scent still on me. I took off my ring, the one he'd given me for our almost engagement, because he said he wanted to wait for the perfect time, and I left it on the counter. That night, I didn't sleep. I scrolled through every memory we had together, every message, every photo. It was like watching a movie of someone else's life, someone who hadn't realized she was the fool in the story. In the days that followed, he tried. Texts, calls, apologies. He cried, said it was a mistake, that it meant nothing. But here's the thing, it did mean something. It meant that the person I trusted most had looked me in the eyes and lied. It meant that all those quiet doubts I dismissed were real. It meant that no matter how much love I had for him, he didn't choose me when it mattered. It took me months to stop checking his name on my phone, to stop hoping he'd show up at my door. Healing isn't a clean process. It's messy and humiliating and full of relapses. You tell yourself you're over it until a song or a smell or a random Tuesday night breaks you open again. But I'm stronger now. I still think about him sometimes, not because I miss him, but because I remember who I was when I loved him. I was softer, more trusting. I mourn that version of myself more than I mourn him. And if you're reading this, maybe because you're in that place too, wondering if you're crazy for feeling what you feel, you're not. You're just human. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away before you lose yourself completely. For weeks after it happened, I lived like a ghost in my own apartment. I'd come home, drop my bag by the door, and just sit there, sometimes for hours, staring at the quietness of everything. It was like the air itself had changed. The place didn't smell like him anymore, but somehow it still felt heavy with him. His coffee mug still sat in the sink. His book was still on the nightstand, half-read, the bookmark a silent reminder of the life that stopped mid-sentence. People kept saying I was doing great because I was functioning. I showed up to work, I met deadlines, I even smiled sometimes. But the truth was I wasn't doing great. I was performing survival. There's a difference. You can go through the motions, breathe, eat, talk, and still not feel alive. It's strange how heartbreak shifts your perception of time. Days stretch endlessly, but months slip by in a blink. I remember one evening, maybe 2 months after it all imploded, I caught myself humming in the kitchen while cooking dinner. It was such a small thing, so insignificant, but it startled me. Because for the first time, I realized I wasn't thinking about him. Not consciously, not obsessively. Just me, a quiet apartment, a pan sizzling, and a song I didn't even realize I liked. That was the first flicker of something like peace. Of course, it didn't last. Healing never moves in a straight line. 1 step forward, 3 steps back. You think you're fine until something stupid, like a memory on your phone or a scent on the street, yanks you back into the ache. For me, it was an email. I was clearing out my inbox one morning and saw his name buried in an old thread. My hand froze. I told myself I wouldn't open it, but of course I did. It was from months before everything fell apart, just a simple message. "Can't wait to see you tonight, miss you." And it wrecked me. Not because of the words themselves, but because of the innocence behind them. I could remember exactly how I'd felt writing that, how safe, how certain. I would have given anything to go back and warn that version of me. The guilt is something no one tells you about. Not the guilt of being cheated on, but the guilt of realizing you ignored yourself for so long. That you saw the signs, you felt the distance, and you stayed anyway because you didn't want to start over. You didn't want to admit that love could fail, that you could fail. One night, after maybe too much wine and too many hours of spiraling, I texted him. I told myself it was closure, that I just needed answers. But really, I just wanted to know if I still mattered. He replied within seconds, like he'd been waiting. "I think about you every day," he wrote. And for a split second, my heart leapt, that pathetic, hopeful part of me that still remembered how his voice used to sound when he said my name. But then he followed with, "I made a mistake, but I've moved on. I hope you can too." That word, moved on, cut deeper than anything. Because even if I hated him, I wasn't ready for him to let go first. That was the last time I texted him. I deleted his number the next day, not out of strength, but necessity. I knew if I didn't, I'd keep reopening the wound. After that, I started therapy. I'd always brushed it off before, telling myself I didn't need it. But sitting across from a stranger who asked, "When did you stop feeling safe in your relationship?" made me realize how long I'd been carrying that question inside me. Therapy didn't fix me. I don't think healing works like that, but it helped me see patterns. How I equated love with stability, even when stability became suffocating. How I'd learned to minimize my own needs because I was afraid of being too much. How I kept choosing people who needed saving because it distracted me from saving myself. There were moments I missed him still. Not him as he really was, but the version I'd built in my head. The man who held me when I cried after losing my mom. The one who made me coffee the morning after our first fight. That version of him felt like home. But the truth is, he wasn't home. He was a temporary shelter I mistook for something permanent. Months passed. I started dating again, if you could even call it that. A string of awkward dinners, polite smiles, conversations that felt like interviews. I wasn't ready, and deep down, I knew it. Every time someone reached across the table to touch my hand, my body flinched, not because I didn't want connection, but because I'd forgotten what it felt like to trust it. Then one evening, at a friend's party, I met someone new. His name was Daniel. He wasn't charming in that immediate, magnetic way Ethan had been. He was quieter, observant, and kind in small, unassuming ways, the kind that don't announce themselves, they just exist. When we talked, it felt easy. No games, no pretense, just conversation that flowed. He didn't ask for my number that night. He just said, "It was nice talking to you," and smiled. And that smile didn't make my heart race, it made it steady. We ran into each other again a few weeks later. Coffee this time, then a walk, then another. I kept waiting for the red flags, the gut drops, the inconsistencies, but they never came. It was slow, patient. I told him about my past, about the cheating, about how broken I still felt sometimes. He didn't flinch or pity me. He just said, "That must have been really hard," and held my gaze until I believed he meant it. It wasn't fireworks or movie moments with Daniel. It was gentle. And for the first time, I realized that maybe love wasn't supposed to be chaos. Maybe it wasn't supposed to feel like anxiety. Maybe it could just be. One night, months into seeing him, I caught myself laughing so hard I couldn't breathe. We were sitting on my couch, eating takeout, watching something stupid, and it hit me I was happy. Genuinely, quietly happy. The kind that sneaks up on you when you're not chasing it. That night, after he left, I stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized myself. Not because I'd changed, but because I'd come back. Ethan texted me once more, maybe 6 months later. A simple, "Hope you're doing well." I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to anymore. His chapter was over. And mine, finally, wasn't about him anymore. It's strange how healing feels so invisible when you're inside it. You wake up one day and realize that the ache that used to sit in your chest like a stone has turned into something smaller, something softer. It doesn't go away completely, it just becomes part of you. Like scar tissue that reminds you where you've been, but doesn't hurt when you touch it anymore. With Daniel, I noticed how different everything felt. The quiet moments didn't scare me. The silences weren't heavy. He didn't fill the space with charm or flattery, he just was. I remember the first time I stayed over at his place. I woke up to the sound of rain against the window, the kind that turns everything gray and calm. He was still asleep, one hand resting against my hip, and I just lay there watching him breathe. There wasn't that familiar panic I used to feel, that instinct to brace myself for the next letdown. I felt safe. That word felt foreign at first, like it didn't belong to me, but it did. It was mine again. Still, even safety can feel uncomfortable when you've lived in chaos for too long. Sometimes I'd catch myself sabotaging small moments, pulling away when he got too close, joking about not needing anything serious. It was a defense mechanism. If I laughed first, maybe it wouldn't hurt as much if things fell apart later. He noticed, of course. One night, while we were washing dishes together, I made some self-deprecating joke about how I probably don't even know how to be in a healthy relationship anymore. He turned off the tap, wiped his hands on a towel, and said, "You don't have to know how, you just have to want to try." That stayed with me. For a long time, love had felt like something I had to earn, something I had to prove I was worthy of. With Ethan, love was always conditional, even if I pretended it was. If I was good enough, patient enough, forgiving enough, maybe he'd stay. But with Daniel, I didn't have to audition for love. It was just there. Offered freely, without the strings or the drama. And honestly, that terrified me more than betrayal ever had. Because when you're used to being hurt, peace feels suspicious. It took time, months, for me to stop flinching at kindness. To stop checking his phone screen when it lit up on the table. To stop assuming that every late reply meant something terrible. And he never rushed me. He just stayed. Not in a performative way, not as some savior complex, he simply kept showing up. One evening, he asked if I wanted to go away for the weekend. "No pressure," he said. "I just thought you might like a change of scenery." We ended up in this small coastal town, the kind with one main street and a bakery that sold cinnamon rolls the size of your hand. We walked along the beach barefoot, even though it was too cold for it, and he told me stories about his childhood. The kind of quiet, simple things that make you realize how someone became who they are. At some point, he asked, "Do you ever think about him?" It wasn't accusatory. It was gentle, curious. I hesitated before answering. Sometimes, I admitted. Not in the way I used to. It's not love anymore. It's remembering who I was with him and who I refused to be again. He nodded like he understood without needing me to explain more. "That's fair," he said. And then he reached down, took my hand and said, "Just don't forget who you are now." That moment, so simple, so human, broke me in the best way. Because no one had ever asked me to remember myself before. When we got back to the hotel that night, I cried in the shower. Not because I missed Ethan, or because I felt guilty for moving on, but because I finally understood something. The real betrayal hadn't been his cheating, it was mine. I'd betrayed myself long before he ever did. I'd abandoned my intuition, my self-worth, my voice. And forgiving myself for that would take longer than forgiving him. A few weeks later, I ran into Ethan. Of course, it happened in the most cliché way possible, at a grocery store of all places. He was standing in the produce aisle, looking almost exactly the same, just a little older around the eyes. He saw me first. For a split second, I froze. Then I smiled, polite, neutral. "Hey," he said, stepping closer. "Wow, it's been a while." "Yeah," I replied, adjusting the strap of my bag. "How are you?" He told me he was doing well. New job, new apartment. "You look great," he said, with that same easy charm that used to melt me, but it didn't anymore. There was a pause. The kind where two people realize they're standing in a space that used to mean something, but doesn't anymore. "I just wanted to say," he started, "I'm really sorry, for everything. I know that probably doesn't mean much now, but—" "It does," I interrupted, surprising both of us. "It means something. I just don't think about it the same way anymore." He nodded, a flicker of something, maybe regret, maybe peace, crossing his face. "I'm glad you're okay," he said finally. "I am," I told him, and for the first time I truly meant it. When I got home that night, I told Daniel about it. He didn't get jealous or insecure, he just listened. "How did it feel?" he asked. "Like closing a door," I said. He smiled. "Good, some doors deserve to stay closed." Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that. There were still bad days, mornings when old memories resurfaced, nights when doubt crept in. But they didn't consume me anymore. They passed through like weather, temporary and survivable. 1 year later, I found myself sitting in the same cafe where Ethan and I used to go on Sunday mornings. I was there alone, journaling, not out of nostalgia, but because I finally reclaimed that space for myself. I looked around and realized that everything I used to associate with pain had slowly become neutral again, even beautiful. That's the thing about heartbreak, it doesn't end with forgetting. It ends with remembering differently. You stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start understanding what it taught you. If you told me a year ago that I'd be okay, that I'd laugh again, trust again, love again, I would have laughed in your face. But here I am. Not the same, not untouched, but whole. And that, I think, is the quiet miracle of it all. It's been almost 4 years since everything fell apart. 4 years since I packed my things, left the apartment we shared, and promised myself I'd never lose who I was again for someone else's comfort. Sometimes it still feels like I'm living in the aftermath of someone else's story, like I was a character who got written out halfway through, only to realize the real story was supposed to start right then. When I think back on that version of me, the one who checked her phone every 5 minutes, who overanalyzed every text, who apologized for things that weren't her fault, I feel tenderness now, not shame. She was trying her best with what she knew. She thought love meant endurance. She thought loyalty could save someone who didn't want to be saved. She thought if she just held on tightly enough, she could keep everything from breaking. She was wrong, but I forgive her. Sometimes I still see Ethan's name pop up in mutual friends' posts. He's married now, with a kid. I used to think that would destroy me, the idea that he got his happy ending after what he did. But when I see his face, I don't feel rage or jealousy anymore. I just feel distance. Like watching an old movie you used to love but can't quite connect with now. What surprises me most is how small it all feels now. The betrayal that once felt like the end of the world, it's just a footnote in the story of who I became afterward. Daniel and I didn't last forever, either. And that's okay. People always assume that once you find the person who helps you heal, that's the one you're meant to keep. But life doesn't always follow those arcs neatly. We loved each other deeply, quietly, honestly. But eventually, we realized we wanted different things. He wanted roots, I wanted motion. He wanted to settle, and I wanted to explore. There was no fight, no betrayal. Just two people sitting on opposite sides of a kitchen table, realizing love alone wasn't enough to keep building from. When we said goodbye, I didn't fall apart this time. I cried, of course, but not the desperate, hollow sobs I used to know. It was a clean ache, the kind that hurts but also frees you. The kind that makes space for what's next. After that, I moved cities again. Not to run away, but to start new, on my own terms. I found a small apartment on the top floor of an old building with creaky wooden floors and too much sunlight. I started writing again, painting again, doing all the things I used to silence when I was trying to make myself smaller for someone else. Most weekends, I take long walks alone, headphones in, coffee in hand, watching people live their lives. I love that feeling, being both part of the world and separate from it, just enough to observe. It reminds me that solitude isn't loneliness, it's ownership. A few months ago, I was at a friend's wedding. The kind of warm, glowing night where everyone looks like they're suspended in candlelight and laughter. As I stood there watching two people promise forever, I caught myself smiling, not with envy or longing, but with genuine hope for them. Because I finally understood something. Love doesn't fail when it ends. It fails when it diminishes you. Ethan's love once made me smaller. Daniel's love helped me grow. And my own love, the kind I give myself now, is what keeps me steady. There was a time when I thought being alone was a punishment. Now, it feels like peace. I've stopped measuring my worth by who chooses me. I've stopped trying to rewrite the past into something tidy or fair. Some stories are meant to remain messy, because that's how we learn. Sometimes, when I can't sleep, I replay the moments that used to haunt me, the confrontation, the texts I shouldn't have read, the silence that followed. And instead of pain, what I feel now is gratitude. Not for what he did, but for what it forced me to discover. He broke me open, but the light that came through the cracks, that was mine all along. I don't think healing ever really ends. It just changes shape. You stop needing answers. You stop waiting for closure to arrive from someone else's mouth. You give it to yourself instead. I think about the woman I've become, the one sitting here, writing this, and I realize she's exactly who that heartbroken girl needed back then. Someone calm. Someone sure. Someone who doesn't chase or beg or lose herself in the name of love. If anyone asked me now how to survive heartbreak, I'd tell them this. Don't rush your healing. Don't try to become the strong version of yourself too soon. Sit in the mess. Feel the ugly parts. Let them hollow you out, because only then can you fill yourself back up with things that are real. And one day, maybe on a random afternoon, with sunlight hitting the window just right, you'll realize you made it. Not by finding someone new, but by finding yourself again. I still believe in love. I still believe in forgiveness. But most of all, I believe in endings, not as failures, but as quiet beginnings you don't recognize yet. Because if my story taught me anything, it's this. Losing love isn't the worst thing that can happen to you. Losing yourself is. And finding yourself again, that's how you win.